At Christmas dinner, Grandpa asked, "How's the house I gave you?" I stared at my parents. Every Christmas, my family gathers at Grandpa George's house in Asheville, North Carolina, tucked away in the Blue Ridge Mountains. His place is a 2-story craftsman with creaky hardwood floors and a stone fireplace that's always crackling by the time we arrive. The air smells of pine from the Christmas tree he cuts himself from a nearby farm, and the kitchen hums with the scent of roasted ham and my aunt's pecan pie. Asheville's streets outside are dusted with snow, and the town's holiday lights glow through the fog, making everything feel like a postcard. For me, Emma Hayes, those dinners used to mean warmth and togetherness, a break from the world. But this year, walking up the gravel driveway with my scarf tight around my neck, I felt a knot in my stomach that wouldn't loosen. I'm 24, fresh out of college with a degree in architecture. I love sketching buildings, dreaming up spaces where people can feel at home. Grandpa George gets that about me. He's a retired carpenter who built half the furniture in his house, including the dining table we'd all sit around. He's got this quiet pride in his work, and in me, too. My parents, Linda and Robert, are different. Mom's a real estate agent with a laugh that fills a room, and Dad's a high school math teacher who's always been better with numbers than words. They raised me in a tidy split-level house in West Asheville, but lately, it's like I don't know them anymore. As I stepped through the front door, the noise hit me. Cousins laughing, uncles debating football, and Christmas carols playing softly from Grandpa's old radio. Mom rushed over and hugged me, her perfume sharp and floral. "Emma, sweetheart, you made it," she said, like we hadn't gone months without speaking. Dad gave me a quick nod and a pat on the shoulder, his eyes darting away. I wanted to feel happy, to sink into the holiday glow, but their warmth felt like a mask. I'd spent weeks replaying our last fight, wondering if I'd done something wrong, but their smiles made me question that, too. Maybe I was overthinking it. Maybe things could be okay. I hung my coat by the door next to Grandpa's worn flannel jacket and joined the crowd. The table was set with mismatched plates and a red tablecloth Mom insisted on bringing every year. Relatives from Raleigh and Charlotte filled the room, their voices blending into a familiar hum. But as I sat down, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Like a crack in a foundation you don't see until the whole house shifts. I had no idea Grandpa's question would make it all collapse. If you're reading this and love stories about family, stick around. I'd love to know where you're from. Drop it in the comments below. Dinner was in full swing, the kind of noisy chaos that only happens when family gets together. The dining room, with its oak-paneled walls and Grandpa George's handmade chandelier, felt smaller with everyone packed around the table. My cousin Sarah was telling a story about her new job in Charlotte, her hands waving so much she nearly knocked over her glass of sweet tea. Uncle Mike was carving the ham, muttering about the Carolina Panthers' latest loss. I sat near the end, picking at my mashed potatoes, trying to blend into the chatter, but my eyes kept drifting to Mom and Dad. Mom was laughing too loudly at something Aunt Karen said, her gold bracelet jangling against her plate. Dad was quieter, cutting his food with the precision of someone solving an equation. They seemed so normal, like the parents I grew up with, but I couldn't shake the weight of what they'd done. I'm an architect, or at least I'm trying to be. I work at a small firm in downtown Asheville, sketching floor plans for renovations and dreaming of designing my own projects someday. That's why the house Grandpa gave me meant so much. 6 months ago, after I graduated from UNC Charlotte with my architecture degree, he pulled me aside at my graduation party. His hands, rough from years of carpentry, handed me an envelope with a key and a deed. "It's a house in Montford," he said, his eyes crinkling. "A 2-bedroom, nothing fancy, but it's yours. Build your life there." The house was worth about $375,000, a modest but solid home in Asheville's historic neighborhood, with a wraparound porch and ivy climbing the brick walls. I'd walked through it once, imagining my drafting table by the bay window. I hugged him so hard I think I bruised his ribs. The next day, I drove to Montford, my sketchbook in the passenger seat, ready to measure the rooms. But the key didn't work. The lock had been changed. Confused, I called Mom. She said they were doing repairs, something about a leaky roof and old pipes, costing around $8,000. I believed her. She's a real estate agent. She knows houses. But weeks passed, and the excuses piled up. Electrical issues, mold checks, delays. My texts went unanswered. Dad, who usually called me back even if it was just to talk about the weather, stopped responding too. Then, one night, scrolling on my phone in my tiny rental apartment, I found the house listed on Vrbo. The photos showed Mom's touch: floral rugs, a vintage lamp she'd bought at an Asheville flea market. They were renting it out for $200 a night, pulling in about $4,000 a month. Over 6 months, that was $24,000, all going to their bank account. I sat on my couch, staring at the screen, feeling like someone had punched me in the chest. I wanted to scream, but part of me still hoped it was a mistake, that they'd explain. I hadn't told Grandpa. He'd been so proud when he gave me the deed, and I didn't want to break his heart. Besides, I kept thinking Mom and Dad would come around, that they'd hand me the keys and say sorry. But sitting at the dinner table, that hope felt foolish. Then Grandpa, holding his fork like he was about to make a toast, looked at me and said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "Emma, how's life in the house I gave you?" The room went quiet. My fork slipped, clattering against my plate. Every eye turned to me. My throat felt like it was closing. I looked at Mom, then Dad. Mom's smile didn't waver, but her eyes were sharp. Dad stared at his plate, his jaw tight. "Oh, Dad," Mom said, her voice light, "we're just managing it for Emma. She's not ready to live on her own yet." Dad nodded, barely. I felt my face burn. The lie was so easy for her, like she'd rehearsed it. I wanted to yell, to tell everyone the truth, but my voice was gone. All I could do was stare, my hands shaking under the table. I couldn't sit there anymore, not with Mom's words hanging in the air like a bad smell. My plate was barely touched, the mashed potatoes cold. I mumbled something about needing air and slipped out the back door, the screen creaking behind me. Asheville's winter night was sharp, the kind that stings your cheeks. Grandpa's backyard sloped down toward a cluster of pine trees, their branches heavy with snow. The holiday lights from downtown twinkled in the distance, but they didn't make me feel any warmer. I paced, my boots crunching the frost, my breath puffing out in clouds. I was so angry I could have screamed, but there was this other part of me, smaller, that kept whispering. Maybe they had a reason. Maybe I'd misunderstood. That part made me feel like a kid again, wanting to trust my parents, even after everything. I pulled out my phone, the screen glowing against the dark. I'd saved everything like I knew this moment was coming. There were texts I'd sent Mom asking about the house, all marked read with no reply. Screenshots of the Vrbo listing, showing the Montford house, my house, with Mom's floral rugs and that lamp she'd haggled for at the WNC farmers market. A bank alert from when I'd checked my parents' joint account by mistake, showing $4,000 a month in rental deposits, $24,000 total over 6 months. And then the voice memo recorded during a fight at their place in West Asheville. I'd gone over, hoping to talk, but Mom had cut me off, her voice sharp. "Emma, you're not ready for that house. It's too much responsibility. We're handling it for you." I'd stood there, stunned, my coffee mug shaking in my hand. I hit record on my phone without thinking, just to have proof I wasn't imagining it. I'm an architect, or at least I'm trying to be. I spend my days at a small firm off Biltmore Avenue sketching renovations for old Asheville homes. I love the details, how a window's placement can change a room's feel, how a porch can make a house feel alive. That's why the Montford house meant so much. It was a 2-bedroom craftsman like Grandpa's, with a sloping roof and a porch where I pictured myself drinking coffee, sketching plans. It was worth $375,000, a stretch for Grandpa's savings, but he'd told me he'd been planning it for years. The deed was in my name, filed with Buncombe County. I'd held it in my hands, the paper crisp, my future written in black ink. But my parents had taken it, and I'd let them, too afraid to make a fuss. Back inside, the dining room was emptying out. I found Grandpa in the den sitting by the fireplace. The room smelled of wood smoke and cedar, the flames casting shadows on his old bookshelves, stuffed with carpentry manuals and Reader's Digest collections. He was sipping coffee from a chipped mug with a faded Asheville skyline on it, the one I'd bought him at a craft fair years ago. I stood in the doorway, my phone heavy in my pocket. "Grandpa," I said, my voice quieter than I meant, "can I show you something?" He looked up, his eyes kind but tired, and nodded. I sat beside him, the couch sagging under us, and opened my phone. I showed him the texts first, then the Vierbo listing, then the bank alert. He frowned, his fingers tightening around the mug. When I played the voice memo, Mom's voice filled the room, cold and certain. Grandpa's jaw clenched, and for a moment I thought he might cry, but his voice was steady when he spoke. "Get everyone in the living room," he said, "right now." The living room was a mess of Christmas, wrapping paper scraps on the rug, a half-eaten pecan pie on the coffee table, strings of lights blinking along the windows. My cousins sprawled on the floor, my aunts and uncles sank into the plaid sofa, clutching mugs of hot cocoa. Mom and Dad came in last. Mom's smile was still there, but it was thinner now, like she sensed something was wrong. Dad's shoulders were hunched, his hands stuffed in his pockets. "Everything okay, Dad?" Mom asked, her voice sweet as she sat beside Aunt Karen. Grandpa didn't answer. He just looked at me and said, "Go ahead, Emma." I took a deep breath and stood in the middle of the room, my phone in my hand. My legs felt shaky, but I wasn't backing down. "I wasn't going to say anything," I started, my voice wobbling. "But since Mom lied in front of everyone, I think you all need to know." I connected my phone to Grandpa's TV, an old flat screen above the fireplace. The Vierbo listing popped up, the photos clear, my house, with Mom's rugs and lamp. I showed the texts, the bank deposits, then played the voice memo again. Mom's voice echoed, "You're not ready for that house." Someone gasped. Uncle Mike's mug slipped, splashing cocoa on the rug. I ended with a video I'd taken a month ago, standing outside the Montford house. It was dusk, the porch light glowing. I'd held my phone up, the key in my other hand, and said, "This is the house Grandpa gave me. I've never lived in it. My parents changed the locks." In the video, I tried the key, the lock clicking uselessly. My voice cracked as I said, "They're renting it out, and I can't even get inside." The room was silent when the video stopped. Mom's face was pale, her hands gripping her knees. "Emma, that's not fair," she said, her voice low. "We were protecting you." Dad didn't look up, his eyes fixed on the floor. I wanted to believe her even then, but the evidence was right there. Grandpa stood, his hands clenched. "Protecting her?" he said, his voice like gravel. "You stole her house. You lied to me, Linda. You took my gift and turned it into your bank account." I looked at Mom, waiting for her to explain. Part of me thought she'd break down, admit she'd made a mistake. But her eyes were hard, and I saw something I hadn't before. She wasn't just greedy. She was scared of losing control, of me growing up and not needing her. Dad was different. His silence wasn't just cowardice, it was shame. I could see it in the way his shoulders slumped, like he knew he'd let me down but couldn't face it. They weren't monsters, but that didn't make it hurt less. The silence in Grandpa's living room was heavy, like the air before a storm. The Christmas lights along the windows blinked on and off, their glow reflecting off the coffee table, still cluttered with pie plates and crumpled napkins. My cousins sat frozen on the rug, their eyes darting between me and my parents. Aunt Karen clutched her mug, her knuckles white. I stood there, my phone still in my hand, feeling like I'd just ripped a bandage off a wound that hadn't healed. Part of me felt lighter, like I'd finally breathed after holding it in for months. But another part ached because the family I'd grown up with, the one I'd shared pecan pie and bad Christmas jokes with, wasn't the same anymore. Grandpa George broke the silence. He stepped forward, his flannel shirt wrinkled from sitting, and looked straight at Mom. "Linda," he said, his voice low but firm, "you and Robert took Emma's house. It's in her name, deeded proper at Buncombe County. You had no right to lock her out or pocket that money." He paused, his eyes narrowing. $24,000 from rentals and not a cent to her. "I'm calling my lawyer tomorrow morning. That house goes back to Emma and every dime you made comes with it. If I have to take you to court, I will." Mom's face crumpled, her usual confidence gone. She pressed her hands to her cheeks, her gold bracelet catching the light. "Dad, we didn't mean to hurt her," she said, her voice shaking. We thought we were helping. The market's tough, and we needed the income to cover our mortgage." Now, I knew their house in West Asheville had a mortgage, about $2,000 a month, not unusual for the area. But using my house to pay it? That wasn't help. It was theft. Still, I saw something in Mom's eyes, a flicker of panic, like she was drowning in her own choices. She'd always been the one to fix things, to charm clients at her real estate job. Maybe she thought she could fix this too, by controlling me. Dad finally spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. "We messed up, Emma." He looked at me for the first time all night, his glasses fogged from the warmth of the room. "I didn't want this to happen. I just went along." His hands were still in his pockets, like he was trying to shrink away. I remembered how he'd helped me with math homework as a kid, patient and quiet. Seeing him now so small made my chest hurt. He wasn't cruel, just weak, and that was almost worse. Grandpa turned to the family, his hands on his hips. "This is a lesson," he said. "Emma worked hard, harder than most. She earned that house, and you all saw what they did. Don't think I'll stay quiet if it happens again." His words weren't loud, but they carried the weight of a man who'd built his life with his hands and wouldn't let it be undone. I sat back down, my legs weak. The anger I'd carried for months was gone, replaced by a strange calm. I wasn't happy. How could I be? My parents had betrayed me, and no lawyer could fix that. But I was done hiding their lies. Mom tried to catch my eye, but I looked away, focusing on the fireplace where the logs were turning to ash. The family started to pack up, their voices low, the holiday cheer drained. I stayed where I was, my hands folded, wondering what came next. The house grew quiet as everyone left, their car lights fading down the snowy driveway. I stayed behind, sitting on Grandpa George's couch, the fire in the fireplace now just embers glowing faintly against the stone. The living room felt smaller without the noise. Wrapping paper still littered the rug, and a half-empty mug of cocoa sat forgotten on the coffee table. Asheville's winter chill pressed against the windows, but inside, the warmth of Grandpa's home wrapped around me like a quilt. I was exhausted, my hands resting in my lap, but my mind wouldn't settle. I kept thinking about Mom's face, the way it fell when Grandpa spoke, and Dad's hunched shoulders as he walked out. I wanted to hate them, but all I felt was a dull ache, like losing something you didn't know you'd miss. Grandpa sat beside me, his coffee mug still in his hands, the Asheville skyline faded but visible. He didn't say anything at first, just stared at the fire, his flannel sleeve brushing my arm. Then he turned to me, his eyes soft but steady. "I'm proud of you, Emma," he said, "not just for tonight, but for who you are. You didn't let them turn you into someone else." His voice was rough, like he'd been holding back tears. I swallowed hard, my throat tight. "Thank you," I said, barely above a whisper. "I just wanted them to be honest." He nodded, his calloused hand patting mine. "Sometimes honesty needs a push, kid." I thought about my job sketching plans at the firm on Biltmore Avenue and the house in Montford waiting for me. It wasn't just a house. It was mornings with coffee on the porch, evenings at my drafting table, a life I could build. I'd spent months protecting Mom and Dad, hoping they'd change. But I'd learned something tonight. Silence isn't love. Standing up, even when it hurts, is. I still hoped, foolishly maybe, that we'd find a way back to each other someday. But for now, I had Grandpa, and I had myself, and that was enough. If this story means something to you, share your thoughts. Have you ever had to stand up for what's yours? I'd love to hear about it. And if you're from Asheville or anywhere else, let me know where you're reading from.